Audit.
Progress.
I don't like, look at my big fat head. Okay. How are you? Okay. Oh, I have to share my screen on here. This is what I always forget to do. Share screen. Oh, that's fine. I hope Debbie comes in here. She should come in here and give us a brief synopsis of the contracts. If we can get her in, I'll rope her in. Try and get her in here. So this is, but as far as the buyers, I'll go back to what I was saying. So I had buyers, they've been looking for quite a bit. My client's pregnant. She's living at home with 2 of her kids under the age of 3 with her parents. So their motivation, and her husband is a police officer in Randolph, and they're up in Hampton, New Hampshire. So 5 days out of the week, he's staying at his parents' house so that he can go to work because they're from the South Shore, and she's there with her kids and her parents. So they want to, like, you know, their motivation is there. This is not something that I recommended. I said that it could happen because we couldn't get in time to see the property. So what happened is this listing went on. It went on, and they were going to have an open house over the weekend, and they were going to close, but it was they made it very clear that they would be they're going to present offers as they come in. They're not setting an offer deadline because this person was relocating due to their job. So because of that, that's a vulnerability that they put out there. Not a vulnerability, but in my brain, it's a vulnerability because later down the line, if things don't work out with the appraisal, I can say, well, my clients are willing to close. Like right now, you're just going to have to basically come back down to reality with your clients. Otherwise, you're going to be starting from scratch and this person's going to be carrying 2 mortgages. So that's already my negotiation in my pocket that I got saved for when that happens. But part of why I felt comfortable going in is because the property looks nice. And I had the conversation up front. I talked about setting expectations. This whole thing is so that my clients have a full understanding of what the process looks like when they go to buy a home. Because if they don't know, they're going to be bothering you a lot. And anything that pops up that could pop up, sometimes things happen and we know it's just part of the process. It's a simple hiccup, something simple, something very easy to fix. To them, it's like, oh my God, something's happening. They're like going to have a friggin' meltdown. So I like to set the expectation with this specific client. I told them, listen, we're going to do a low deposit up front of $1,000. So if you get this property, things come together, which they did, and we go see it, you don't like it, you can walk away, but you're walking away from that $1,000. As long as you're okay with walking away with your first deposit, we're just going to say, listen, change it. They change their mind. They're okay with walking away with this deposit, with you keeping it. They're okay with that. So they're super excited. We're going to go down there tomorrow. But when your sight unseen offer gets accepted, you can tell the nerves sink in and they're like, oh, shit. What if I don't like this house? It's in Stoughton. So it's in South Boston, south of Boston, and it's a very competitive area. So they got like, so the house went on for $524 and we put an offer for $580 with no home inspection. And I'm going to have them go through with an inspector anyway. So when we go back on Sunday, we're going to come with an inspector so they know what they're taking on. And then again, they're going to have to be okay with walking away with this $1,000 thing. I made that explicitly clear that this was a risk. So that's something that you want to make explicitly clear to your clients. This is why setting expectations is huge. Because if they get there and they don't like it and they don't know that, okay, well, that's fine, you can walk away, but they have a right to take your deposit. Otherwise, you're gonna have to go to court, and realistically, it's not gonna look good because, you know, you agreed to purchase their home, you gave them $1,000 and now you want to walk away, they're gonna keep that. If that's something they find out on the spot after they're already in it, that's a problem. And you'd be surprised how many times clients end up in that situation, because I think that new agents just don't know how to properly communicate the expectation. Were you raising your hand?
No, I didn't say that better than both departments.
Well, that's what, and I've also stressed to them since their offer got accepted. I said, listen, we only have a short period of time where this is going to be like, okay, great, you can back out. Because I also did an extremely aggressive closing date of November 29th, knowing that this person was trying to do a relocation. These buyers, I already had my lender they've already been through underwriting. I did that for a reason, because we were getting beat out offer after offer because they're FHA buyers and he's a police officer. So they work a lot of details and their income is a little weird. And the loan officer is concerned about how an underwriter is going to perceive that. So I said, listen, let's just send them through all of underwriting. And this is something that the lender is relying on you to do. Some of them just go right through pre-approval, but I want them to go through the entire underwriting process. And if you work with a lender long enough, like this lender, Donna, loves me because she knows that if she gives me a client, it's done. It's closing. I am a closer. That's what I do. So you want to set that expectation early. And if you set that expectation early with the people you work with, they'll trust what you say. So when I said you need to send them through underwriting, which is a lot of work for Donna, if she didn't trust me, she'd be like, no way, I'm not going to put them through underwriting and then have them like maybe not close, but she knew that if I had that I would get them under contract, and they're under contract. Their approval came back on Wednesday and it's Friday. So you have to be aggressive. You have to be strategic. And these are things that you'll learn over time. But again, I set the expectation with them. There's some negatives to it and they have to be okay with that risk, especially as far as the home inspection goes. And putting an offer on a house you've never seen is not something that you do unless you're extremely, extremely motivated. And it worked out though, because I had conveyed to the seller their motivation. I said, listen, she's having a baby. They're living apart right now because he's working in the South Shore. She's up in New Hampshire. They're living with family. They're really eager and they're having the baby in December. We would love to get in there and have their first day of their home be December 1st. So they know, just like I know, it's like the Spider-Man meme. Have you ever seen where they're all pointing at each other? That's literally like, I know that you got to leave because you're relocating and you know that we got to go because they're having a baby. So it's kind of like one of those. So I'm sure that that's part of, she did explain that was part of why our offer was chosen, because they could close fast and she knew that their motivation was there, that they're realistically it's highly unlikely that they would back out. And the house looks nice. I would never recommend someone, I don't ever recommend it anyway. I didn't. And I want you guys to understand, I didn't say, hey, want to throw in a sight unseen offer? The house had been on for like 5 minutes and there was a bunch of offers. And she said, how could there already be offers? And I said, someone might have put in a sight unseen offer. It happens. And she was like, well, what is that? Let's do that. I want to get out of here. Like, what are we doing? Like, I'm okay with that. If it's okay with that, I'm okay with that. So this is, again, I was able to set that expectation. So basically you're going to hear me say, set the expectation about 3,000 times today, because I find it to be very important. This is, I'm just going to kind of go over like a mock home buyer seminar. And then if we can have Debbie come in and look over some contracts, great. If not, I'll look over some contracts with you guys either way. If you have your binders, your Massachusetts buyer contracts are all in there in order. So this is where I would start. This I put together when COVID happened. So it's going to be very COVID-y. Now, obviously things are changing a little bit, but this was something because we had to get creative when COVID hit. I don't know if you guys had your real estate licenses when COVID hit, but everybody was there was calls after calls and meetings. It was like, holy snap, what are we going to do? You have to start peeling back expenses and thinking, how am I going to continue to sell homes if I can't be near anybody, if I can't talk to anybody, if I can't take them to see homes? So this was one of my creative ways that did pan out really well for me, because I had a home buyer seminar over Zoom. And this was one that was like new. I'm like, oh my God. And I set up an Eventbrite, which worked out great because I got all of their contact information and, you upload it into Command and they're part of your database now. And this is something for long-term nurturing. So you want to implement this like on a quarterly basis or by like every other month. What leave? That's for my sphere. Which one? Whitney Ave? So that's not one that that I got during COVID. This is from my sphere. Leads from this was like me putting online, like, don't worry, you can still buy a home during COVID. If you're interested in the home buying market, let me know. And I closed the deal already, actually this past month with what a lead I got from here. But mind you, I did this in March of 2020 and I just closed it in 2021. I put it everywhere.
So those leads
Everywhere.
kind of came to you after you marketed.
I market it and then I also shared it. So I had, as you'll see, as we get into it, an attorney and a lender come in. So they're having their people come through as well.
Oh.
Debbie.
What's up, kids?
I was gonna make Debbie look over some buyer contracts with you guys. You don't have to if you don't want to, but Brian said you were meeting. Well, I'm gonna run through this and then I think that we can go. So I have the attorney piece. I don't know if you got time, if you're vibing.
I'll
and you
meet
got
with
time.
Brian 11.
All right. He's in here. So once we get to that point, you can go over the buyer contracts. Because Debbie, like when I say very vague, it's because that's Debbie's thing. Debbie's way better at it than me. I don't know what I'm talking about. I know how to do it.
Yes,
I go on
you do.
autopilot.
Yes, you do.
I go on autopilot, but I don't ever want to say the wrong thing. And
And
Debbie is
here's the
confident.
thing, The productivity side of it, like the going and getting stuff, I work off my sphere and my like referrals and that's it.
Yeah.
This one out there is like,
That's why we have each other. Because I'm like, I don't know. I don't want to say how to fill out a lead paint form, because if I'm wrong and you're wrong, I don't want to be responsible for your fine. Debbie.
$1,000 per-
Exactly. That's why Debbie does that stuff.
You
So-
don't even make on a contract.
I know. So we're gonna go start. So if I'm gonna pretend you guys are like my home buyer seminar, I'm gonna say, hey guys, I really appreciate you signing up. I wanted to finish up my last thought. I'm so sorry. I also got more business because I had the lender and the attorney also pumping it out, and it has my brand on it. So it looks like it's from me, but it's hitting the sphere of 2 other people. So that's where you want to start including your affiliate partners, make relationships with lenders and do stuff with them. And they want to do that with you too. Like, attorneys aren't big, scary people. They're like, just like us. They get business just the same way that we do. So work with them and build relationships with them. And when you're in trouble, you'll be really happy you did. Just kidding. Don't get in trouble. But welcome to my home buyer seminar. Who are we and what are we talking about? I'm going to put this down on here. So I do like a brief intro of who each of us are. This is the attorney I work with, Matt. I've done this with multiple lenders, so this is something I switch out. If I have Donna. Attorney generally stays the same. But I just go into a little bit about our backgrounds. I don't know why it's cut off like that. It's bothering me, but I have them speak. So I speak for myself. Hi, I'm a realtor at Keller Williams Andover. I've been selling real estate since 2015. I worked for my parents for 5 years. Now I'm on my own. And then I say, I'd love you to meet Matt McDonald. He's a senior loan officer at Premier Mortgage Lending. Matt, you want to tell them a little about yourself? Then I let Matt speak. And then I do the same for Tony. This is Attorney Popolo. He's been a wonderful help. Me and him do a lot of business together on estate sales. If unfortunately you guys ever need help with that, please let me know. Tony, why don't you tell me a little about yourself? Tony speaks. So it's not like you're up here just like squawking the whole time. Debbie, before we get started, this is what I put on there. These are disclosure disclaimers between types of agency. I've emailed the copy of all of them for your records. I do this ahead of time. So I set up the Eventbrite link and I get their emails and I send an email with these in them because I'm a psychopath. Debbie, do you want to explain these a bit?
Okay, I legally cannot explain the New
No.
Hampshire one, but I
Just
can
pretend
explain the
that this one's
Massachusetts.
not here.
I can explain the Massachusetts one. So basically, 2 pages. The first page of it is basic information and that you and the buyers or sellers will be signing or not signing. And this is the explanation of how you can be represented in a transaction. So it's a seller's agent, a buyer's agent, a non-agent, which is a facilitator. And I cannot express this enough. Read these and understand them on your own. And if you have questions about them, we'll talk about them because everybody's interpretation of them, as long as you understand it, it's fine. Your interpretation of it might be a little bit different, but just to make sure that you understand. So
You want to be able to
designate-
explain it.
Huh?
They want to be able to explain it,
Yeah.
so you have to fully
Right, you-
understand it.
This comes out of my mouth, just like blah, 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 the way I'm explaining it too.
And that's why I don't like to, because if I'm wrong or my interpretation is different than yours,
Yeah.
I don't want to be
But like
responsible.
designated seller's agent, buyer's agent, and dual agent, I'm actually in this situation right now with a listing. My listing in Stoneham went under agreement and then came back on the market, and now people who came through don't have an agent. They came into my open house, they wanted a second showing, they came in unrepresented. I was going to do it as an unrepresented buyer, but I decided that I'm going to work with them as a buyer's agent. So I made them go through and explained everything to them and.
And that's
that way
very
they-
important because when you become a dual agent, it's not just this. There's
Right.
like several pieces of paper they need to sign so that they fully understand you're representing both parties
Yeah.
and that you're limited to what you can do.
You basically have to have split personality, and I make a joke out of it when I talk to people about it, but I can tell you right now, I'm glad for the days that I can be somebody else, you know. But,
Yeah.
you know, I can be a seller's agent, I can be a buyer's agent, I can completely separate the two as 2 different transactions. You have to be able to do that. Otherwise, you cannot ever. You can't.
I don't do it.
You can't cross the information, you can't share the information if you do not have permission from both sides, so.
It's very difficult. I would do unrepresented.
Yes,
or
yeah.
refer.
Why can't you legally explain?
Because I'm not.
She's not licensed in New Hampshire. I can legally tell you that it's exactly the same thing. Except there's way more dual agency disclosure in New Hampshire than in Mass. There's required a lot more, which means somebody got in big trouble in New
Mhm.
Hampshire. Anytime there's something that we have some use, a client sign, it's because somebody somewhere effed up.
Yeah.
And now we need it documented, now we need a signature. Every time a purchase and sales grows, it's because somebody got sued and that attorney had to deal with it, so they throw in a clause to prevent it from happening.
So what you can't see right here is these capital letters that are under this, this says, this is not a contract. This is information for your buyers and sellers. The other thing is that on the bottom of this page, I don't know if it's on New Hampshire, but on the bottom of this page,
Yeah,
if for some
there is.
reason they say, I don't want to sign it, you're literally handing them information. It's a pamphlet. It's just information required by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. It's for their information. It's for their help. It's so that they know what they're getting into. There's a box down the bottom that says decline to sign it. You're still gonna have their information and you still have to keep these on record.
And just so that you know, this is put out there so that buyers and sellers agents can't take advantage. So if you're at an open house and you don't know anything about real estate, which most people don't, like they only buy a home like on average 4 times in their life. So, and that changes drastically every time you do it because that's just how real estate is. So if you come into an open house and you don't understand that I represent the seller and everything you tell me is going right to the seller, if you tell me I'm willing to pay X, Y, and Z, but I want to actually start at this price, but I know that I'm willing to go this high, I'm going to use that against you because I'm going to be negotiating on behalf of my seller. So that's why it's important that these are always out so that the buyer that walks in understands, oh, okay, you're designated to the seller, so I have to go get my own agent or understand that I can only tell you what I want you to know.
What happens in the case of like with Debbie now, if someone had come in and told you something that maybe already delayed and now that it's back on the market and she might be representing?
Well, she had this out, so they knew it was posted that she represented the seller. So if it's posted that she represents the seller and they come and tell her some shit anyway that they shouldn't have told her, that's on them. She's
So
posted
if
it.
If you're
somebody comes-
representing them now, it doesn't matter.
So it's like when they came into the open house and they gave me their whole spiel about why they were buying the house and who they were buying the house. You know, it's a cash deal. The parents are buying it for their kid. Great. You know, when my seller asked me after the open house, who came through the open house, I had explained, you know, these people came in, you know, if these people decide to buy, you know, they'd be a cash buyer, you know, just so that they have their options. They don't know which buyers, they don't know which people, you know, who it was specifically. I'm not giving them any names. Now that they have this contract, I've had the conversation with the buyers. Do you want me to tell the buyers, do you want me to sell this to the sellers on why they, you know, they should accept your offer? Yes, tell them that we're buying it. Tell them that it's cash. Tell them that we don't have an inspection. Tell them that there's no financing. Please tell them whatever you can. We want to buy this house for our kid. Okay, now I have permission. I can relay that information. If the seller says to me, you know, I don't want to sell to somebody for blah, 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 you keep that to yourself. Like, I don't even want to know that, why you wouldn't want to sell to somebody. Like,
Yeah.
people giving those love letters, don't ever do them.
Oh,
Don't ever,
they're not
please.
accepted anymore.
I just got one.
The house in Stoneham, well, I had Stoneham, not Stoneham, Stoughton. I put,
Not about that yesterday. We're allowed to.
yeah,
don't-
they're not allowed to, I don't recommend them. I had my client ask, can I write them a letter? And I said, I can ask them, but a lot of people aren't accepting them now because if you write in there, okay, I have kids. I want, you know, I'm pregnant, I'm having a baby, I want to, you know, and I have a 2-year-old. We're gonna come in the house and we're gonna enjoy it, love it, and bake cookies and all that stuff.
Is that ever beneficial for the buyer?
It's definitely beneficial because I've been on this listing side and sometimes they work, but they're being used less and less because, so say you say, okay, I have a 2-year-old child and this house was built prior to 1978 and the seller knows, there's a chance that there's lead in this house. I'm definitely not accepting that offer because I don't want to be responsible for the lead poisoning of that kid. Then the buyer can come back and say, you discriminated against me because I have a child. So now they're becoming more and more infrequent and they're becoming less and less like, so I straight up asked, can I submit this letter? And the lady said, no, no. She said, I love them. They're lovely, but my office is not allowing us to accept them anymore. So you're going to see that more and more frequently. And I don't suggest that you do because there's a chance that they could not get the house if they see something that.
Well, when I bought my house in 2007, I actually did write, and it literally was on a piece of paper, like in my handwriting. I'm surprised she could even read it. And it said, you know, my name is Debbie Longo. I want to buy this house to raise my son in. I want to raise him in Wakefield. Because I did that at that time, it was an older woman that didn't want the other person to buy it really because he was going to turn it into condos. This is a house that was in her family that like her husband's family built and
Yep.
all this other stuff. Turns out it was my mother's best friend's grandfather that built the house and I never knew that.
That's pretty
So,
cool.
very
Yeah.
strange. But it was meant to be.
Okay, at that time it was fine, but there was nothing really, I mean.
Nothing
I
had
said I
happened
wanted
yet.
My family, it was just me and my son, that was my family, and, you know, that was a benefit, but now, just don't.
Just everything, things in real estate are always gonna change. That's like this new appraisal thing that everyone's hot topic of what are you gonna pay over appraise? Are you gonna write appraisal language in? I'm a firm no. No, I'm not, because their appraisal is covered under their financing. If they're putting more than 20% down, and it could become a problem, then I'm gonna add some things in there, but that's why it's so important that you fully understand what the contracts as much as you can. Debbie's gonna be there to walk you through the first 4 because it's overwhelming until you do it a few times, but it's important that you understand because you wanna be able to correctly negotiate on your client's behalf. If someone, and I was a new agent and didn't understand that the financing contingency would protect them from an appraisal that came in low, I might add some appraisal language that would hurt them. Or I might add additional language that could disqualify them that's unnecessary. So these are all things that you don't want to do. So I like to go over the steps. I like to set the expectation in this presentation. I put, step 1, talk with the lender. Without knowing your budget, it's very difficult to look at the inventory. The details of what you are pre-approved for make a huge difference in what inventory is available to you. It's not only about price, it's about the type of loan. If they have a VA or an FHA loan, that's automatically going to disqualify them from certain homes. If they have a conventional loan with only 5% down, it's just going to allow you to be able, you're going to have to think of some negotiation tactics to compete with the 20% down conventional people or the all cash deals. Just like I was talking about the house I put under contract yesterday, that one, I knew they were going to have trouble with the FHA portion of their loan. So I had them go through underwriting. And that made a difference. So these are all things that you want them to talk to the lender first. I highly recommend send them to a lender. If they already have a lender that they're adamant about sticking with, say, okay, I'm going to set up a call with your lender. And then can we have a buyer consultation? Because then you can discuss with them their specific expectations. This is like on a group setting, but you want to do like a mini one for each one of your buyers. So when I get a buyer, I refer them to my lender. Most of the time they don't have a lender. I refer them to my lender. If they have a big bank, I say, that's great. You can use them. Here's my concern. X, Y, and Z. I don't think that it's a great idea because they tend to muck up the process. They don't get creative about problem solving and it can be a real issue. They don't stick to deadlines and that's a real problem in this market. If you want to stick with them, you have every right to, but if you entertain another lender, here's a group of ones that I think are wonderful.
So if you don't, like recommend the lender that they're already using, I mean, it's never right. You don't speak bad.
I don't speak bad about a specific lender. I try to inform and educate my clients on the difference between the lending process at a big bank and the lending process with the small mortgage lender. So that's really what I'm doing. If they decide, I would never tell them I'm not going to work with you if you go with the big bank. I just know, okay, my job, we're going to know now that this one's going to be a effing nightmare. So we're going to allocate some time to that. We're going to be ready for that because it just they just don't care about deadlines. They're talking about like the underwriting is down in South Carolina and this property is being sold in friggin' Stoughton, Mass. Like, it's just like they don't understand. They don't care about the deadline. They won't talk to you a lot of the time. They say, oh no, we only talk to our clients. So they won't talk to you as the realtor. And then your client's frustrated because they're like, I don't know the process. Why don't they talk to you? And it's like, because they're a big bank. Don't you wish you went with a little lender? And they only work 9 to 5. I like to explain to them, big banks work 9 to 5. Lenders work like realtors work. They work where and when there's business. So if we see a home on Saturday and it's a situation like this, multiple offers, we want to decide we need your offer by 8 p.m. and we only have a pre-qual for 525 and you want to get an increase of, up to 550 because you can do that, we're gonna have a problem. So that's I don't ever talk ill about them. I don't say like, ugh, they're yucky. I just say their processes are different. And based on how real estate transactions run in Mass and New Hampshire, it can sometimes create issues. And I've said that, and I've had plenty of people say, well, that's good for you. No, I'm staying with my bank. And I say, okay, more power to you. Go ahead. But either way, I want to have a conversation or have a very good review of their letter. If I can't get in touch with the lender, if it's a big bank, I just have the buyer consult anyway. And I discuss with them what their wants and needs are. If I think that they're unrealistic, I tell them in a nice, tactful way. I say, like, if they're like, oh, I want to spend $100,000. This is a real buyer consult that I had. I want to spend $100,000. I want 2 sources of heat. There can be no lead paint, so no homes built before 78. And I would like there to be 3 bedrooms. So for me, I say, okay, with the way the market is right now, it's not going to happen. So what we need to do here is shift gears. We need to extend our timeline. Oh, and I'm pregnant and I'm having a baby in December and I'd really like to be in before then and it's September. I'm like, okay, well, let's just immediately knock that expectation down because there's no way that's happening. So if I say, you know, then it was discovered in the conversation. I said, realistically with that budget, you're going to want to either go much farther into New Hampshire or, you know, the 2 sources of heat is a little bit unrealistic. Maybe we can find something that you can install a wood stove in time. And then as far as homes built, you know, after 78, sure. But that's just know that that's reducing your pool, therefore extending the time. So as long as you understand that, I'm good. But if that's going to be like, oh, well, that's not going to work for me. It's like, okay, well, then we're going to have to increase your budget or we're just going to have to be realistic about you can't buy a home right now. Let's look for a rental and then we'll stay in touch. So these are things just to stop you from showing 10 houses before you're like, wow, this person is like not getting what they want when you knew from the jump. The pre-approval. So this is what I was talking about. The difference between pre-qualification and pre-approval. We've kind of already gone over that. Matt does a pre-approval in a day, the way that Premier Mortgage Lending does it. So they take all of the information up front and they do it in a day. I don't think that they go all the way through underwriting. And that's something that I've developed with having a relationship with, I could be wrong. So definitely check with Matt, but the process takes like a week or 2 for them, for underwriting to review everything, kick stuff back, ask for a paper trail, whatever. So you want to make sure that you have a full understanding with the lender where your buyer is, like what else do they need, whatever. And if again, you have these are the different types of loans. So this conventional and FHA are the 2 most common. FHA and VA are basically the same, except VA, you put no money down. FHA allows for 3.5% for a 1 to 4 family home. And it's more lenient with credit scores and debt to income ratios. Conventional has some products that are 3% down, but standard down payment is 5% for most conventional loans. There's a big misconception that you need 20% down to buy a home. And that's something that you want to knock out immediately because it's going to bring a lot of buyers to you. What you got?
I thought VA was on those two.
It is,
Yeah.
but FHA and VA are both like government loans. So they have basically the same stipulation, like you need an FHA or VA water test. That's something why you want to develop a relationship with the lender, because if you don't understand that, you don't order a water test and it's the day or, you know, a week before closing and you're like, oh, snap, I didn't get the water test. Then you get the water test and then an issue pops up with the water test and the well needs to be bleached. Now you need an extension of your closing. So it's important to understand. And again, by developing relationships with lenders want to educate you. They're going to have classes that you absolutely should attend so that you know what you're doing. You need to know a little bit about everything. You need to know a little bit about law. You need to know a little bit about lending. You need to know a lot about real estate, a lot about the real estate market. So step 2, once you talk to a lender, you've gotten your pre-approval or pre-qualification. We know what kind of loan you have. We know what your budget is. We can start to look at houses. This is what I meant about COVID-y. Look at that stupid mask. Remember the like start of COVID masks? They were like made out of socks and stuff. That's like what this mask reminds me of. But so this was a big difference between COVID. Like we were so not used to it. I was wearing gloves. Oh my God, it's embarrassing. But once you're pre-qualified by a lender, it's much easier to look at houses. Despite the COVID-19 pandemic, the market is still very busy. What the virus has changed is how homes are shown. So I just wanted to show you can still see houses. If you want me to go into the house and FaceTime you to show you the house, I can do that. If you want to come wear mask, gloves, and a hazmat suit, let's roll. You know, what do you want to do? We're getting more virtual tours now with listings. So this is just what I wanted to relay at that time.
One of those things about going to, I don't even care, but going to go look at houses, don't bring an entourage.
No,
Bring-
parents are deal killers. That's what I call them. They're
Go
deal
look at the
killers.
house. Whoever is buying the house, whoever is financially going to be responsible for this house, gonna sign the deed, whatever it is, those are the people that need to look at the house. If at some point your parents, your uncle, your sister, mother, brother.
I say
have
after
to
the
look
fact.
at it, that can be another time.
Yeah.
but
Once you
needs to
get
be
it.
The people who are buying it and.
Yeah,
because
same
you
with the
can't
home
do
inspection. They're
much.
gonna
And that's
ask,
all
they're gonna ask, can my dad, if you have a young woman in her early 20s and she asks if her dad can come to the home inspection, you're gonna wanna die because that dad is gonna be like, well, looks like there was water down here back in 1975. Is that gonna happen
I
again?
remember once when I was 12.
Yeah, it's just like and you know that their intention is not bad, but it's just like, hi. They want you to, they just want you to, you know, they want it to be perfect for their kids. And in reality, you understand that, like, okay, well, you're spending $250 on a house, so it's not going to be perfect. It's just no home is perfect. You could buy a new construction home and have it be completely jacked up in the attic where they didn't put any ventilation in, and you have a mold problem within a year. Like,
No dryer vent in a new construction
Exact-
home. How?
carbon monoxide poisoning for everybody. So these are all things that, so these are things that, like, you understand after viewing and selling homes, like, there's something wrong with every house. And I also like to set that expectation. That's what we're going to get to next. But this is something that, if you cannot have an entourage, Debbie makes a very excellent point there. Don't have one, because no house is going to be good enough. And usually once you get the entourage, you get an idea of if they're actually, you also need to be able to internally tell if someone is emotionally ready to buy or emotionally ready to sell, because you will waste a lot of your time if you don't pick up those skills early. Just because someone has, they could be a cash buyer, but if you're in there and they're bickering every time and no one can agree and they love the house, then they ghost you for 4 hours or the day and don't get back to you, like, these people are not emotionally ready to buy. They're fighting, there's an internal relationship conflict, and that's why we get paid the big bucks, because we deal with all of that. And that's not from me, that's from a lender. That's what a lender told me. He said, you guys get paid the most because you have to deal with all of it. We're the only ones that are like boots on the ground kind of people. Everyone else, like, you can go through a whole transaction and never meet your lender one time. It's very rare that you would meet your lender in person unless they come to the closing, or if you're have an initial in-person meeting, but that's very rare. So you're the one that's taking the beating. So if you can prevent dad from coming to at least the first showing, it's very hard to stop them from the home inspection. But I always try to say, yeah, that's great. We just don't want to bring too many people, because I blame it on COVID. We just have to be respectful of, this is going to be in someone's home, so they might feel a little weird if we have like 10 people at the home inspection. But feel free to FaceTime dad. We can FaceTime dad, so we won't be here. But that is good point. So this is offer time. So because I'm licensed in Mass and New Hampshire, I have a little bit of both in here, but please just disregard the New Hampshire stuff. So I'm going to kind of go over this briefly. I explain the difference between a contract to purchase and a purchase and sales agreement at the offer time stage in my buyer presentation, because in New Hampshire, there is no contract to purchase. The offer is the purchase and sales agreement. So that's why you don't want to be talking about, oh yeah, we're going to have this offer, and then you send them a purchase and sales agreement, and they're like, wait a second, what is that? So I just had to have the explanation for them. Either way, so I explain the difference. In Mass, buyers submit a contract to purchase, and if it's accepted and after the home inspection, buyer and seller are able to come to terms, a purchase and sales is written by the buyer and seller attorneys. In New Hampshire, buyers submit a purchase and sales as they offer, and if it's accepted and buyer and seller are able to come to terms after home inspection, buyer's attorney works with the seller's attorney on an addendum to purchase and sales for repairs, reductions, and closing costs. In reality, the attorneys aren't going to do anything in New Hampshire. You're going to be the one coming to terms. You're going to be the one writing the addendum. I will have an attorney check, because it's like, I usually just run it by and say, hey, is this language okay? Sound okay to you? Yeah, great. Most of the time, they don't even respond. So I just do it. And if they have a problem with it, they will ask you to correct it. But that's the difference between Mass and New Hampshire. What is entailed in these contracts, Debbie can explain a little bit. My quick spiel to my clients is the amount of money you're offering to pay, your down payment and at what increments it will be dispersed, your home inspection window, a purchase and sales due date if it's in Massachusetts, what type of loan you have, which I don't even think they do in Mass. That's only you have to put the type on the contract to purchase. No, it's just the amount. Yeah, just the amount. In New Hampshire, they want to know what type of loan you have, but in Mass, you don't.
Well, some of the other brokerages have like a whole contingency form. And
Yeah.
they have it specific,
Yeah.
But we don't.
Yeah, nothing for the state. Financing contingencies, who the escrow agent is, so where those deposits are going to be held, which is the list brokerage, and special requests such as closing costs, personal property included, appraisal limits, if over asking, etc.
There's some situations where the escrow is held not at the brokerage,
Yeah.
but at the attorney's office,
Mhm.
because there's maybe a probate or whatever.
Mm.
The seller decides if that's what they want. whatever.
I also had someone have the buyer's agent hold it.
Ah.
It was very weird. They were adamant about it. I mean, I had to be flexible though, because my guy had like the EPA involved, and like it was just a nightmare. So I was like, yeah, whatever, hold on to it. But so basically that's all that's entailed in these contracts. It's an initial, hey, this is what I want to buy your house for. This is how much money I have to put down. It's a showcase of how strong I am as a buyer. And it's the contingencies that I want to work with. Right now on the buyer end, your contingencies are waiving them. I'm getting rid of my home inspection, or I'm willing to pay you more than what your house is worth by X number of dollars, or I have an escalation clause where I'm initially starting at my comfortability level and then pushing that to the brink. So these are all the normal escalations you're seeing right now. I mean, contingencies. Thank you so much for that. I have ADHD, words slip my brain sometimes. It is
If
what
they're
it is.
waiving the inspection, there is a form they have to sign with this office.
Mm.
If it's a buyer and they're waiving the home inspection, it's a form. So,
Because you're the only one that's liable if they have their home inspection. But again, what I'm finding is done on a few of my listings, and what I'm doing with my buyers who just waived their home inspection is we're having one anyway. We're just calling it a second showing. We're having a second showing where an inspector comes to the house.
Isn't that called an inspection? I don't want to say.
No, there's a home inspection. It's
There he is.
so that's like new. That's because of this market. Preliminary inspections was not a thing before this happened.
Created
Because of
inspections were being
waived.
They have to make some sort of money, right?
So this was a sight unseen offer I had to submit. So we didn't even get to have a preliminary showing. So we're gonna go see the house for the first time today. And then on Sunday, I've already arranged for them to come back with the dad and the whole clan of people. And we're gonna have a home inspector come through. Again, I had the expectations early on with my clients. If you wanna do this, be okay with walking away from your first deposit. Just know that. And they're okay with that, so I moved forward. I would never recommend what I did yesterday to a client. This was on their pure motivation and need to get out of the situation that they're in. And a suggestion of what I thought was happening as to why there were so many offers on the property with it being on with such a short amount of time. That's how that happened. This is not something that I went to my client and said, hey, you want to do a sight unseen offer, waive your home inspection? They'll ask you, what do you think will get me the property? And then I'm honest with them. And if they want to go with that, great. But then I also have to set the expectation of, okay, but you're going to be risking your deposit. If you're cool with that, great. You're going to be risking the fact that you could be stepping in some shit when you go and buy this house, because there could be something majorly wrong with it that was missed due to a home inspection. So these are all things that I am very clear about. And if it kills the deal, it kills the deal. But I don't want them to ever be able to come to me and say, Sarah, you didn't tell me this. Like, oh no, if anything, I told you too much. I overspeak. I don't really hide. So, this is something that I put on there is how to be a competitive buyer. This data is very old, but it still is true. So, look well beyond the top of your budget as prices are inflated. I explain escalation clauses instead of a bidding war. Some agents don't accept escalation clauses. I'm not sure why, but for me, I feel very strongly that it's the only buyer's protection in this game that we're in right now. So what an escalation clause is say this property goes on for $525. My clients say, I'll give them asking. I'm willing to go over asking, but I don't want to throw in a bid that's $50,000 over if everyone else isn't, so this is a way to protect them. So I'll say, my client's going to offer you $525, but they're willing to pay $2,000 over the highest offer up to $580 with proof. Yeah. With proof of said offer. So then if they say, hey, Sarah, great, the offers came in at around $560. Are they still willing to pay $562? Yeah, sure. Give me a copy of the offer. Okay, no problem. Great. 552, 62, whatever the hell it is. So it's a way to protect your clients from overspending. Sometimes you'll submit an escalation clause and the agent says, oh, I don't want to do that. I have no idea why. Truly, I don't have, I honestly think it's because they don't know how to read them. I think that they just don't know what they're doing, because why wouldn't you? It's just a way for me to regulate the overspend, really. And essentially, it's just, that just might happen to you. And if it is what it is. The sellers really have all the power right now. Therefore, the listing agents have most of the leverage with negotiating. Do your best to be available for showing sooner rather than later, because sometimes people will be like, hey, yeah, this house came on. I want to go see it next Tuesday. And it's like, okay, well, it's going to have sold 4 times by then. So can we go see it sooner? So you want to let them know, be available. Do your best to not get discouraged. The market climate could change at any time. You want to be nurturing the emotional side of this, because it is definitely emotionally draining for them. And you'll work with buyers that need to take a break. Like his buyer just took a 2-month break. They need to, it's beating them up, like it's just like you're trying to get out of the situation you're in, you get excited and then you get let down. You put another offer in, you get excited. Oh man, this is the one, you get let down. You might even get to home inspection. So yeah, you're ever get to accept, you get to home inspection, it's a nightmare and you can't come to terms, back at square one. So these are all things that happen. So you want to make sure that you're nurturing their ego, essentially, of like, it's okay, this happens, you're not the only one this is happening to. This is a highly competitive market. You want to understand that homes are usually priced taking depreciation into account as well as repairs needed, because you'll have a lot of buyers come in and say, well, 530, well, the roof needs to be done. And it's like, well, if the roof was done, it'd be like 545, but the roof isn't done. So they priced it. This agent came in and took into consideration the condition of the home. Just like when we were doing those CMAs, I said 8,000 times, make sure you're paying attention to the condition of the comps you're using, because you want to make sure that they match the price. Who this be? Sorry. You want to know going into your search that the housing market has only gone up in price since COVID started. There was a lot of people thinking that they were going to get a deal because of COVID, and it was like, buddy, it's actually the opposite. We have less homes to sell. Step 4 is the home inspection. The cost of a home inspection, depending on the size of the home and the state you're in. You're buying in, a home inspection can cost anywhere from $300 to $850. They're well worth the money. In New Hampshire, so that's why I did the difference between Title V and septic inspection. You have to pay for a septic inspection, and it's by choice. You don't require, there's no requirement to inspect the septic at all by the state or by the lender. But for you, as a buyer, I would suggest you do that, and that's going to come at an additional cost, but it's well worth the money. Title V in Mass, the seller takes care of the septic. So that's taken care of. The home can't close, or there needs to be some sort of Title V agreement if there's an issue with the septic. The timeline in most cases, buyers, which is just like comical now, buyers have 10 days from the time of accepted offer to have the home inspection inspected prior to the purchase and sales being due. A big part of my job is to make sure the timeline is adhered to in order to protect your deposit. A shorter timeline is more competitive. So traditionally you get 10 days. Now, if you can do it sooner, you should do it sooner. Like if you can, that's going to make your clients more competitive. If they're going to keep their inspection intact and still have a chance of getting the home, you might want to shorten that to like 7 days, and maybe call the inspector, and say, hey, do you have availability, or find out who they want to use and get that ahead of time as you're submitting the offer.
Like RD inspections, they were doing a thing, I want to make sure they're still doing it, but.
The preliminary?
Well, not the preliminary, but they'll schedule the home inspection, so you can make it part of your offer and say that we can have this home inspected like.
Oh yeah,
tomorrow.
great. See?
We already have an appointment, and they weren't charging a cancellation fee. I
Mhm.
noticed that they have a cancellation fee now on their website. I don't know if that's the same thing, but
Yeah.
call them and talk to them, or go online and look at their website, but inspectors just.
And just know that all of the people that support the real estate industry support you as a realtor, because
Yeah.
you're the one putting it together. And that's why our role is so important. And I think that sometimes that gets lost a little bit in like the salesy aspect of it. When we do our job, we have to be very good at it, because we're coordinating a lot of different things with a lot of different people. So these people will shift as the market shifts with you to make your job easier, because they're relying on you, you're relying on them. So RJ doing that was a way for them to support realtors, because that's how they get their business. But that's the home inspection piece. Obviously, things are being waived. Highly would not recommend that, but it's happening. Negotiating. So we're going to be doing a class on negotiating next week. So I'm going to kind of shoot through this pretty quickly, but negotiating is a repair. So these are things that come up that you need to negotiate about. Obviously, you have to negotiate about initial terms, price, stuff like that. But a repair list or price reduction. These are things I like to touch on with my buyers, because sometimes people see like, oh man, well, there's a crack in the ceiling. Does that mean we can take $30,000 off the house? It's like, no. And that's what the dads come in and say, because the dads are like, oh, it could be structural. In reality, it's like this house was built in 1910. It's probably just a settling crack. But I digress. It's a repair list or a price reduction. Usually the seller is willing to accommodate fixes for problems that arise at a home inspection. The issues would normally be pretty significant to warrant a price reduction. If there's this failed septic, I love it when a septic fails, because you're like, you have to fix it. You have to fix it, or I'm not buying the house. And if you don't, my clients aren't buying the house. And if my clients don't buy the house, you're gonna have to go explain to the next person that it has to be fixed anyway. So when septics fail, that's great. It usually means your client's getting a new septic, especially in Mass, because it's Title V, but especially in New Hampshire too. I could also, if they didn't have the funds in New Hampshire, like they're like, I don't have the money. Like I don't have the money to pour in and pay 15 grand for a new septic. I could say, okay, well then we're either going to do a reduction, or you're going to give us cash back at closing towards their closing costs, so that they can do it as soon as they get in.
Also, some of the things get creative, like.
Yeah.
One of the deals that I had, and she's actually on my team now, one of my clients bought a house in Wilmington, and it was a short sale, and the seller was not gonna do any repairs to the house, including putting the septic, which he had already paid. He had already had the engineer come out and do the drawing.
Which is not cheap.
No, it was like, I mean, it was like $1,500 for that, and then it was $22,000 to do the septic. So they wanted top dollar for it, for the home. And then when we submitted the offer, they were like, no, we're not replacing the septic. So we went back and offered less the money to put the septic in, plus a little bit more, over that, less than that. And I actually went to the septic company and said, we can't close without this. Do you want to get paid for the septic job that you were gonna get paid for? Because the guy's never gonna pay you for it. My buyers are willing to pay you, but we have to have it part of the offer. Can you put the septic in before we close? I said, I will physically hand you a check at closing. I will physically write this check to your building, to your house. And he goes, if you can get the engineer to sign off, I never met the guy before. He goes, if you can get the engineer to sign off on this, I'll do it. I went to the engineer, made him the same promise. They never met me before, but take the chance, like.
And
you
you're a
guys have to
licensed
ask the
agent.
question.
Yeah. And when Debbie's asking it over her client, she has a license. So he also knows if you do this and I don't get paid, I'm going right to the real estate commission. There's a door that they can knock on to be like, excuse me. Whereas if it's your client, it's not the same. They have to go to court. It's like a whole process. So that's where you also want to be creative. The good agents like Debbie are the ones that they do what you do what you got to do. That's why it's hard for me to say, like, what do you do in real estate? I do whatever I have to do to make the deal close. I've been literally stayed at someone's house till 2 a.m. packing their things for them. I've done whatever I have to do is happening. I don't recommend doing it. Don't get into the habit of it. But sometimes
the closing, the 3 days before the closing, and they're like, oh my God, we haven't even started packing. What?
oh no, I had someone who refused to move out. That was a good time.
I found a completely full attic.
Oh, we'll talk about this in negotiations. But a second is the contribution towards closing costs, which is obviously your clients on the buyer side are going to have to come in. They're going to have to pay closing costs. If they can save funds, keep it in their pocket. That's a nice way to kind of meet halfway. Sometimes if there's a bunch of little things, you might say, here's a bunch of the things that are wrong with the property. We'd like a $5,000 contribution towards our closing costs. If that can be accommodated, that'd be great. Usually they're fine with it. It's usually 5,000, anything over 5,000, I feel like is usually when it starts to get like, wow, that's like, there's usually some bickering back and forth. Every house has something. Know going into your home search that every house needs something. So keep your comfort level for repairs in mind when placing your offer. Because sometimes you'll get people that put an offer in on a house and they have the home inspection. They're like shocked by things that are just absolutely obvious. Like it's really dated. Like, yeah, when we saw the house, it was dated. Like if that's a deal killer for you, don't buy it. Or like, it smells like cigarettes. It's like, yeah, it smelled like cigarettes when we saw it the first time, So these are things that I like to set the expectation up early. I like to let them know, like, if you're in this house and you can already see this is like a handyman special where like the cabinets look like crap, you're gonna have to come in, maybe paint them, spruce it up, have a cleaner come through, and that's not for you, like you're gonna have a baby in 10 minutes, then don't put an offer in on this house, or put an offer in and make accommodations otherwise. So I like to, again, set the expectation. I don't talk to them the way I'm talking to you guys, but I said it with tact because I want them to be prepared, and they always appreciate it. They're never going to not appreciate your honesty. They might get frustrated with you initially, but at the end, at the closing table, I can guarantee you, they will thank you and they will be happy to refer business to you because I am not afraid to burst my client's bubble. You have to, because if you let their emotions, the whole purpose of you is to remove the emotional aspect of this transaction. If you allow their emotions to dictate, it's going to be a mess. Deal's going to fall apart. You're going to lose sleep. You might get paid, but you're going to look like, you got dragged through the mud after. You have to recover for like a month. Just be honest with them. I also like to, because sometimes, again, you'll have the home inspection and then someone will come to you and say, I am so disappointed that I've been living here for 2 years and the water heater went. And it's like, okay, well, you bought this house 2 years ago and you had a home inspection and they told you that it was depreciated fully. So like, I don't know why you're shocked by this. So I like to set the expectation of home inspections can't reveal everything. A real life story. I sold a house in Derry, New Hampshire. They did not want to pay for a home inspection. The girl had her dad's friend who's a construction worker. I think he was a general contractor. I'm not really sure, but he was in the trades. He came through, he took a look at the house. Me at this point, I'm seeing things that are like huge red flags, like charring on the roof, like there was a fire inside, like horrible things that for me are like huge red flags. And I'm trying to point them out, but they know the construction guy more than they know me. So they said, he says it's good. I feel good about it. I tried to get them to go with a home inspector, but it's their choice. I can't force them to do anything. They move in. She's pregnant, by the way. They move in, they're getting the nursery ready. The dad, the man that bought the home, puts his hand up against the wall and it falls through the wall because it was full of black mold. And it was because the seller knew that there was mold. And in New Hampshire, it's a disclosure state, big no-no. They knew that there was a leak from the AC that had created a huge mold issue. When they started to mitigate the mold, the neighbor came to my client, who's the new owner, and said, "Oh, you fixing the mold problem?" And he was like, "What do you mean?" They're like, "Oh, they knew there was a mold problem. They've been having this problem for a long time. We thought that you guys knew that." So then had to go back and the seller had to pay us some money for the mold mitigation. But that could have very easily, they could have felt moisture in the wall with their moisture reader if he had a home inspection. They're very in depth, but again, realistically, some things are hidden. You can't peel the walls back. And you want to make sure too, like if you want to make sure they understand that if there's a home inspection that comes, they can't reveal everything, because if the seller has boxes stacked up in front of the electrical panel, no one can touch that stuff. It's their personal property. I'm not allowed to touch it. Sometimes I do anyway. They're not allowed to touch it. If breakers are shut off, we're not allowed to touch them. Are they off for a reason? Is there an electrical issue that could cause a fire? I can't turn it on. So these are all things that could potentially happen, and I like to set the expectation. I'm not saying they will. I like to do it tactfully. I don't want to scare my clients. I just like to let them know this is going to be a really good physical, but like of your home, but it's not the same as an exploratory surgery. We're not going to be able to peel the walls back and see things, but we'll get a pretty good general idea of like what the health of this home is. But that's that. I want to make, yeah.
I know right now a lot of people are waiving it just because of how crazy the market is and like trying to do the most competitive offer, but aside from like the market now, do you think a lot of people normally waive home inspections?
No.
Oh,
It was like,
okay.
I would have, if people told me 3 years ago that everyone was waiving their home inspections, I would have been like, yeah, that's funny. That is like was never happening. It was like it started with home inspections for informational purposes only. That was like, oh girl, they're only doing for informational purposes only. Their offer's getting picked. And then that wasn't enough. So then people came in, started waiving their home inspections, and then that became the norm to compete. And then what happened with COVID is that we had a lot of cash from people that were relocating because of the remote work situation. They don't need to live in Boston. They don't need to live in New York. They can go back to where they came from or wherever they've wanted to live. And New England got hit pretty big. I feel like they just discovered, I think my personal experience was I've seen a lot of people that got Airbnbs during COVID that lived in the city, and they're obviously very wealthy people. And they spent the summer up in the White Mountains, up in the New Hampshire region is what I'm seeing from being licensed there. And now they're all moving there and they're all beating everybody out with cash, because you sell your house in Manhattan or in Boston, you can buy a house cash up on Lake Winnipesaukee, no problem. So these are things that it's really just a way to compete. And once things die down, and honestly, I've gotten through all of this, I've gotten several offers accepted with the home inspection intact. You just have to be like strategic about where you're placing your clients. Like if I have somebody who is like adamant about having a home inspection, I'm going to recommend that they shop well below their budget so that they can make that up with their price of what they're offering. And that I just lost my thought. This happens to me all the time when I teach classes. I don't know why. I'm going to recommend basically that they shop below their budget, and whatever they buy, they're comfortable with whatever fixes need to be made. And that it really is for informational purposes only for the most part, because realistically, they're going to have backup offers. So if your offer gets accepted with an inspection, I still try to let them know that like just the reality of the seller doing much of anything is unlikely. Most of the time they pleasantly surprise you though. I find that the sellers are more than willing to work with you. But yeah, no, it should go back to normal where people are getting, it's more frequent. They don't have to. I find around Boston is really where that's still happening. But again, I've had several offers accepted with their home inspections intact. So it's not like every single time. I was like, that's where my thought was. If they are adamant about keeping their home inspection intact, which they should be, I have them target homes that have been sitting on the market for a long time. They're usually overpriced. And sometimes like I've got put several deals together where that's just like, okay, this sat because it was overpriced. We gave them asking and we allowed the appraisal to bring the price down. Or we went in and just offered what we were comfortable with, and they took it because they just wanted an offer. So that's something that I do for people that are like, no way, I don't like competing, da, 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 da. It's like, okay, well then we're going to look at houses that have been on for 30 days and there's not that many of them. So it's going to take longer time. Why won't this go? So this is the purchase and sales agreement. This is where I have Tony. So I kind of got lost on that. When I do this, the lending piece, I let the lender talk about. I don't tell them about the FHA, 3.5% down, all that stuff. I let the lender that's on talk and explain, answer any questions. I usually interject and say, hey, what about closing costs, and have them talk about closing costs. But this is the purchase and sale. So this is where I would say, hey, Attorney Popolo, Attorney Popolo is going to explain to you what are some contingencies in the purchase and sales agreement. He reiterates consistently how, I'm an attorney that's working for you. If you don't understand any of this, please let me know. If you want more things added, please let me know. Like, we can discuss this. This is something that, we're more than happy. We work for you. I think there's an intimidation factor when an attorney is in the sphere of things and people get nervous to ask, but encourage them to ask. This is the thing that he added. Don't be afraid to ask your lawyer questions. We work for you, and it is important that you fully understand what is going on. Once the transaction is closed, your ability to have any legal recourse for issues with the home become extremely limited. So that's where his whole spiel is. And go to Debbie if you have any questions about a purchase and sales agreement. But in Massachusetts, it's the attorney, so it's really not much. I go over in depth here too, because again, I am licensed in New Hampshire. So I also work with purchase and sales more frequently. But in Mass, where you guys are all licensed in Mass, you're not going to have much to do with it. It's going to be on the attorney.
I need to stress is when you have a purchase and sale in Massachusetts, even if the attorneys have both reviewed it, please read it.
Oh, yeah.
Please read it, because I've had ones that are hooked up to town sewer and water, and, it says Title V must be done. Well, there's no septic, so there's no Title V.
Because a lot of them, they're just copying and pasting information.
It's definitely just a boilerplate. It's they're not gonna recreate it every single time. I just had somebody that asked me that. They're like, I'm gonna assume that this draft is just like a boilerplate one. I was like, well, do you think that they're gonna type out the
Yeah, no.
9-page document for every single person?
No.
They'd be doing 100 of them a day.
Yeah.
So just read through it, make sure the details are right, make sure because you're responsible for it just as much as
And
they are.
sometimes the attorneys talk over the phone or in an email that you're not included in, and they change things like the
Yeah.
financing deadline. And that's something that you need to make sure you're on top of, because the lender and the attorney, while they should be talking, they don't. They rely on you. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention to any dates that have changed. And if they are wrong, say, hey, did you guys renegotiate this date? Or is this just wrong? Is this different from the contract to purchase? The appraisal. Hot topic. An appraisal is the process of developing an opinion of value for real property using comparative properties, usually sold in the last 3 to 6 months. The buyer is responsible for paying for the appraisal as part of the mortgage process, so that an unbiased opinion of value can be provided to the bank before lending funds. If the appraisal comes in at a price point that is lower than the offered sale price, buyer and seller can usually renegotiate. In this highly competitive market, it isn't unheard of for buyers to pay more cash to supplement for a lower appraised value. And a low appraisal can affect your loan process if you're working with a lower down payment. So if you have a deal where you're putting 3.5% down and you're having to cover your closing costs, and say it's this property that's put on for $580 and it comes in at $560, they don't have $20,000 to make up the difference. So that's going to be a problem. So these are things that people are trying to negotiate right from the jump. Like she said, the seller's agent, when I submitted my offer, said, all the other offers are coming in at around the same price. And they're willing to make up the difference in cash if they need to. Are your clients willing to do that? And I said, no. I didn't say no that bluntly, but I said, we'll cross the bridge when we get to it. We'll renegotiate if it depends on how much it is. It depends on if they have the cash to cover it. It really depends on the situation. We'll kind of cross the bridge when we get to it. She accepted my offer, and the second sentence is, congratulations, your offer is accepted. My client's very concerned about the appraisal. And I said, great, he can stay concerned, because I'm not changing that at all. I'm very firm on that. Unless my clients are okay with it, unless it's to them, like sometimes they have the cash and they really want the house. They're like, I'll just give the extra 10,000 or whatever. That's fine. You want to do that, you do that. But I'm going to try to prevent that as much as I can. Because realistically, it's not fair. I get so irritated. It's like going into someone, like I show my car and they're like, oh, it's worth 10,000. And then, you go, oh, well, I want 14 for it. It's just stupid. It's not right. And you're asking somebody, in my argument, when there's an appraisal issue, the first words out of my mouth are, I want you to understand that you're asking my client to pay more than what your house is worth. Period. It's that simple. Your house is not worth this much money, and you're being greedy. So if we don't come to terms, you're going to have to put this house back on the market and explain that you want someone that's willing to pay more than what your house is worth. And 9 times out of 10, that negotiation right there, deads it, and my deal stay together. Because it's just stupid. It's just stupid. You're gonna go out here and say, oh yeah, well, they won't give me $40,000 more than what my house is worth. Like, okay, go ahead, do that. Go do that. But again, I've been doing this for 8 years and I'm fed up. So
Saying everything exactly you're saying it to us too.
I do though. In that scenario, I do. I would say you're asking, I get it. I mean, it is what it is. It's also, you will gain a level of confidence when you keep deals together. So it's like, you will be unsure and then you'll close enough deals to be like, oh no, I'm sure. I'm sure that this is very stupid. And I also have had enough deals fall apart on me to not be afraid of it. If the deal falls apart, the deal falls apart. My value is the relationship with my client. If that means that they don't get this house because they're gonna have to pay a stupid amount over, especially if I know they're only gonna be there for a couple of years, like we're already buying at the peak of a market. So you're asking them to be upside down on their home already? Okay. And if they were if I was in person, that would be my face. Okay. Underwriting. This is where I ask my lender to step in and explain the underwriting process. Because once you put the deal under contract and negotiate the terms, it's really, they get passed off to the lender and that's where most of their communication is. So I just tell them what they need to be prepared for, be prepared to provide supporting documentation. This is also something that the lender sent me. I did not do this. It says here, don't make any changes to your job profile, don't obtain any new credit. And I also like to add my little important blurb of, in addition to your down payment, you'll need closing costs, which are expensive. However, you can ask the seller to pay for some or all, or the lender can sometimes credit some as well. Be sure to discuss your options with Matt, the lender. However, that's super uncommon nowadays to get seller concessions covered. So what you can do is to say, if they need it, if they don't have the cash to cover their closing costs, if they're going to offer $310 and they need $10,000 back, ask them to offer $320. So that's basically them financing it. So you say, okay, we're going to do $320 and ask for $10,000 back. So the seller is netting the $310 that you intend to give them.
I asked Matt when I met him, but I know you've worked with him a couple times. Does he normally tell, like when he does the pre-approval, tell me the breakdown of everything, what he thought what the closing costs are?
It's hard to estimate until they're under contract, or if they have he can give them an idea of what their closing costs are going to be like, but it depends on the taxes, which depends on the town, which depends on a lot of different things. So it really depends. But he should be able to give them a rough estimate of what they'll be. Closing. This is the day we've been waiting for. Before the closing, we'll do a final. Before closing, we'll do a final walkthrough of the property to ensure it's in room swept condition and all personal property has been moved or is in the process of being moved. Prior to closing, you'll see in person what repairs may need. What repairs have been completed from the home inspection addendum of your purchase and sales agreement. Usually you find that out ahead of time because they're very eager to know, like, did they fix that? Did they fix that? Did they fix that? So you've already asked them, but now they can see it. Sometimes they get a couple of walkthroughs. Sometimes you have buyers that like want to see the house every friggin' week. If it's vacant, I mean, it's okay, but like, my God, it's a lot. So, and a lot of the times we get receipts, but this is where you would ensure that everything is as you want it if there's things there that aren't supposed to be there, or if they say, oh, the washer and dryer is included and the washer and dryer is not there anymore, then these are final walkthrough issues that you need to deal with. Closing will usually take place at an attorney's office or at the county registry of deeds. Once the paperwork is signed and the deed is recorded at the registry, the home is yours. It's okay if it doesn't get recorded the same day. Sometimes that happens and you'll have your clients be like, oh my God, am I going to sleep in my car? It's like, go in there, go in the house. They gave you the keys, go in the house, you're good to go.
No.
Yeah, Quicksilver does gap. Quicksilver does gap. I've had a seller flip out because the buyers were going to the house and it wasn't on record. And the attorney told her, F off. They said, listen, you signed a document saying that you were okay with this person moving in.
That's fine, as long as.
It's the attorney thing.
Yeah.
It's the attorney thing.
Because I had a closing, the first closing I didn't attend. I was actually at a festival with my son and left it in the hands of the attorney and the listing agent. And my client went into the house before it was on record and noticed the hot water tank had burst. And everybody said, too bad, you went in the house.
Well, I think that probably would have been the same situation.
And I tried to have the attorneys fight it, and the buyer's attorney was like, well, nothing really I can do. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah. So it depends. I wouldn't do it over a weekend, but I have had that. I've had that where like if you're not closing until, and sometimes like, it's not like you're just signing paperwork and they're bringing it to the registry and giving it to them. They're having to have funds wired from the buyers, funds wired from the lender. If there's any funds proceeds from the seller, that has to be wired over to the next deal. And these things can take time and they can unfortunately push it so that it's not recorded till the next day. If they have a question of can I move in, they need to ask the attorney. Most of the time, I'll do that for them. I'll say, okay, let me call, I'll be right back. But most of the time. But listen to Debbie, there could be a nightmare. So is real estate fun? It's like, you're probably fine, but maybe not. Just kidding, I don't know, maybe. But that is my buyer presentation. This is how I set the expectation for my buyers. I suggest you put something together that's similar and you like, yeah, I can send this. It's already on the, it's on this recording, but I also have it uploaded to the PC dashboard. I have this specifically. And if you guys want, I can send you the template on Canva, I'm pretty sure, if you wanted to use this exact one. It's a little girly, it's a little feminine, but you could change the colors and stuff, or even just pull the information. But I didn't write the purchase and sales information. I didn't write the lender information. I wrote what applied to me. And then I asked the lender and the attorney to send me stuff and I put it into this. So it's not like you're doing all of the work. It's a team effort. Yeah, yes, I can. Mine is a little bit different because it's team-based, but I'll definitely, the new one that I did, because I had a simple one, a listing presentation that I had put together, but it could be better than that. That's why I did the new one. But most of the time spent at your listing is going to be on the CMA, but you do still want that material so that you can showcase your services. But do you guys have any questions? Concerns? Nothing? Anything about Seller 101 that we need clarity on?
My question is too much.
No, ask it.
It was about finishing the CMA, but I was way too far from finishing it.
No, it's all right.
I'll just
Well,
leave
still,
it.
you can finish it. Oh, it's all right. Oh, don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. What number did we come up with? We didn't agree.
Like, that number just made sense.
The number made sense and it was only on for 3 days.
It
So
was
we've,
on for 3 days, but then it expired in June, so it didn't-
so they never put it back on. So it just didn't make sense. And even if it was maybe overpriced at the time, we were discussing that between June and now, it probably went up. So even if, and that's the thing with expires, if you're going and you're saying, oh, it was overpriced a year ago, it might not be overpriced now. So their number might not be unrealistic. So that's why it's important to be focusing on those expired listings. Because if they're expiring right now, it's like, what happened? Like, how did that not sell? There's nothing for sale. So
Is there a specific way, just to make sure there's a specific way you come up with a number?
yeah, so if you go, I just have to be mindful of the time because I have to drive to Stoughton, but I want to maybe log in here. Just ignore the fact that my license expires in 13 days. I'm working on it. I'm doing my continuing ed. What am I doing? Tools. CMA. So where's one that I did? Oh, seller workshop comps.
I want to, yeah. Here. Well, maybe I should see. Yeah.
Yeah, I highly recommend getting your New Hampshire license. I do. I just think that I'm not like probably like a 40% increase in my business because the ability to accommodate both, because we live so close to the border, it just makes sense. So this is like this was one that we did, I think, with Harold yesterday, I believe. I think that's his name. I'm so sorry if it's not. I'd never met him before. But this was a tough one because it was, or was this yours? One of them we did, it was so see this is a tough one. It's 700 square feet. That's incredibly small. 3 bedrooms with 700 square feet is going to be very difficult to comp. So we actually went, and it's built in 1900. This is wicked hard. So we're going to go, and we stepped out of Lawrence because there was not enough in Lawrence to make sense. We only could find 2 comps that made sense. And again, this is very difficult. This is one that I would absolutely have to go and see. and kind of feel out. And I would want to be extremely conservative with my numbers. So I pull them and it shows just these two and the 8,000 different ways you can. So you can see here, obviously I like to highlight that every single time. So this is gonna say it's an indicated value of 305 based on, and with an average days on market of 23 days. It's on the thing, the report. So you're not just like making it up. It generates it for you. There's a purpose. And sometimes you don't always agree with it. And again, I want to highlight before, like we had said, a couple of people were like, well, I like the price of that one. And it's like, you cannot pay attention to the price. You have to pay attention to the what you're looking for as far as criteria. Whatever the price is, the price is. It's not something that you're picking. It's something that the market is telling you and you're interpreting, and you're going to put it on and test with buyers. And that's that. I want to see if I have another one that I can show you guys. There's one that I have to look at. Yeah.
I don't know if you remember working on mine a few days ago. It was really strange property. It had like 17 or 1,800 square feet.
Yeah.
in a cave-type
It was,
house.
yeah.
So I was trying to, after I left, complete the CMA, but it was difficult for me to find the value of a bedroom there.
Do you know what an appraiser counts as a bedroom value? Neither do I. If I had to get,
Count as a garage value. Like,
I think it's 20.
I
I know.
really no idea.
I would ask, go on that wall, the back wall, and find an appraiser's card and call them.
Okay.
These are the things that you do. You know, you have to do what you have to do for you to be more marketable as an agent. If you can have conversations with an appraiser and say, listen, I'm having difficulty with comps, as most people are. This is not specific to any property. I'm a new agent and I'm learning. What would you value a bedroom at? Because if I'm trying to comp something that's a large space, but I can't find any bedroom matches, I want to be able to get it as precise as I can to prevent overpricing this listing. It's simple as that. And then just have conversations with people. So it might be a selection that you need to pick. So let's close this. That was it. So if you go to sold side by side property, or what is this? Yeah, pricing analysis. No, hang on. Let me take a look. I'm going to open this one and see. It can also be on your net sheet if you include your net sheet. If you look at like high and low.
That's high and low, but that one says suggested sale price. I don't see it.
So this is the suggested sale price prepared for Christina Murphy. Indicated value by sale comparison approach. So if you go to you have to check off indicated value by sale comparison approach. I have to redo this one. There you go. But this is this is a 2-family. The condition on the interior is rough. And 2 families in Everett sell weird. You'd think that they would sell higher and faster, but their days on market are long. And there's a lot of reductions. I'm wondering if it's because of the casino. What do you think, Deb?
What?
Everett.
Depends on the section of Everett.
I know. I have a multifamily, and all the comps, was a ton of expired multifamily comps in Everett, tons.
Yeah.
I'm gonna pick them up. I have one coming on. If my clients,
Is it on the Chester?
no,
What side of it?
oh God, I don't know. I don't know. I'm not good with them.
What street is it?
It's on, Cleveland Ave. Maybe it is on the Chelsea line. I don't know. I'll send it to you. I'm working with them. They want to fix up some of the interior. The exterior is fixed. There's been some structural work done. All the heat is new, but when I run comps, there's a lot of expired comps.
Yeah.
And a lot that sit for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it was like the average days on market is like 45 days, which seems just stupid. But
Yeah,
very weird.
yeah.
So that's what I got for you. I'm gonna go back to Zoom where there's nobody, but we recorded it. Hi, guys.